So today's video is going to take you through a little bit of a practice of some questions dealing with arrays, because coming up pretty soon you'll have an arrays test. I think it's a little ways off yet, but I want you to start getting some practice of some concepts with them. So you should have this packet. It says arrays packet number 2. Starts with some multiple choice questions. And what I really want you to do first, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 multiple choice questions. I would like you to pause the video, take 10 or 15 minutes, and do these multiple choice questions. And before you start the video, I want you to show me just those 5 questions done, and I'll check them for you. And before you actually watch the video, I'll let you know what you've got right, what you've got wrong, because I would like to see where you're at with this. Okay, so pause the video now, do questions 1 through 5. I'll know if you didn't do this, because if you don't come up and check them with me before the rest of the packet's filled in, I know there's something fishy going on. So do actually pause the video and try these questions on your own, and then check it with me before you restart. Go ahead. Okay, if you're watching this part of the video, you should have already done questions 1 through 5. You should have already had it signed off that I've checked it, questions 1 through 5. And now you can see the explanations of them. Okay, so number 1 says, giving the declarations int bracket bracket a equals new int size 10 and int bracket bracket b, which the following will cause an array index out of bounds exception. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this with the original notes, but basically an index out of bounds means that you're trying to access a spot that's not there. So if this is array A, it's of size 10, the first slot's always 0, and then 1, and then 2, all the way up to slot 9, because that's actually 10 slots because you're counting 0. So A bracket 0 equals 10 would be fine. That would just put a 10 in the first slot here. A bracket 6 equals 10, that'd be fine too. It would just find slot 6 and put a 10 there. But there is no slot 10. So right here, it's choice C that's going to cause that out of bounds. A bracket 10 doesn't exist. Now this D might have looked a little weird to you, but you can set an empty, undeclared array equal to another one. It doesn't actually create a new array. It actually just makes this memory location the same as that memory location, so it points to the same spot. But it is C. All right, number 2. Which of the following code segments correctly creates a 4-element array and initializes it so that each element stores its index. For example, the element at index 2 is actually 2. Okay, well, first 2 are both created by initializer lists. And remember what initializer list does is it makes an array and it fills the array with all of these values. So 0's here, 1, 2, and 3. And this is slot 0, this is slot 1, this is slot 2, this is slot 3. So that does exactly what I asked for. It creates a 4-element array and initializes it so that each element stores its index. So 1 is good. So anything that doesn't have 1 in it is out. Now 2 basically does the same thing as 1, except it stores it with 1, 2, 3, 4. And hopefully you can see that's going to be off from the indices because that's index 0, 1, 2, 3. So 2 is not correct. So anything with 2 in it has to go away. So at least you're down to a 50-50 shot now. This makes an empty array of size 4 to start out with. So it should be 0, 1, 2, 3. And then it goes a for loop starting from 0 going less than 4. So when I is 0, it sets a bracket 0 equal to 0. And then I becomes 1, and it says a bracket 1 equal to 1, etc. So this actually works also, and it's D. Now I don't know if the one thing that might have bugged you a little bit was usually you don't see a for loop without brackets there. It's okay to do it as long as there's only one line of code that's happening in that for loop. By default, if it sees a for loop with no brackets, it'll do one line of code underneath it. So that's okay. It compacts things a little bit, but it's not generally good practice. Okay, down to number 3. It says, which of the following loops will reach every element in the array A and not cause an error? So we can't go out of bounds. We have to make sure we get to everything though. So remember, when you use a for loop to go through an array, you want it to start at 0 because 0 is the first index. So C and D I'm ruling out right away. You can't go equal to A dot length because if you're equal to A dot length, like let's say it's size 4, you have 4 slots, but if the index starts at 0, the last slot's going to be 3. So we can't get to slot 4 because there is no slot 4. So E is out. A essentially does the same thing as E because I'm doing less than A dot length plus 1. I don't want to go 1 higher than the length. I want to go strictly less than the length because if the length is 4 again, I'd only want to go up to 3. So B would be what we want with that one. Okay, so those are the answers to the first page. And we got 2 more multiple choice you should have done on the second page. Assuming all values are declared correctly, which of the following swaps the values of x and y? So let's just make something up. Let's say x equals 2 and y equals 3. Now we talked about this in the last packet. If I just do something like 1, if I say x equals y, so x is equal to 3 now, and y equals x, well, x is 3 also, so that would end up in both being 3. You need some sort of temp variable to make it work. Okay, so let's try this again with option 2. Option 2, I'm going to reset, say that's 2, that's 3, has a temp variable. And here it sets temp equal to x initially, so temp is equal to 2. Then the next thing that happens is y gets set to x, so y goes away, becomes what x is. And you can kind of see right away there's no 3 saved anywhere. So when I say x equals temp, that's also going to be 2. It doesn't work. So the order is very important when you're doing these swaps. So here in 3, I'm setting temp equal to x first. So if I have my 2, 3, temp would be 2. Then I set x equal to y, which is safe because I've saved what I stored in temp should be the first thing I change because that's saved. And then y equals temp, that swaps them. So 3 only is the only one that would have worked for that one. That's C. Okay, and then the last one. Suppose we are adding up all the values in an array called A using a for loop with loop index k. Which statement, if placed in the body of a loop, will correctly add the current element to its sum? So if I want to add to its sum, I need an accumulator. So B, D, and E are out. Because I need that plus equals if I want to keep adding it on. Now, do you want to add the values stored in the array, or do you want to add just the index? Well, it says we'll correctly add the current element. That's the element stored in the array. So we need A bracket K to get to the actual value that's stored there, rather than just the index of where it's stored, which would be what C would be doing. So in other words, if I have an array here, and fill this with numbers, so if I do sum plus equals A bracket K, this would be adding 5 plus 7 plus 9 plus 2, whereas this one would be adding 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. K is just the index values. A bracket K is the value stored there. Okay? All right, now this next section is always a little tricky to me. It's true, false, but some of them we haven't really talked about before. Like number 6, an array in Java is an object. That's actually true. It's an object as opposed to a class with methods. So like a string is more like it's a class that's written as part of your Java package. So that's why strings.length have double parentheses, whereas arrays.length do not have double parentheses. 7's an important one, so I'm going to star that one. When an array is passed as a parameter and changed inside the method, the changes will be gone when the method returns. That's actually false. Normally, if I change a parameter but don't send it back in the return, the changes will be gone when the method returns. But with arrays, that's why a lot of arrays are public void methoded. You can send an array as a parameter, change the values in there, and then when you go back, those values are changed. And the reason is that the actual arrays get passed other variables. It kind of makes a copy of those. Like if you send an int over, it makes a copy of an int. It makes a new int, not the original one. But with arrays, it sends the actual array. The memory location gets sent. So when you change the values in the memory location, they're also changed. I'll try to point that out when we do some examples later. 8, you should know an array in Java can change size as needed. What do you think about that? True or false? That's false. Once you make an array a certain size, it's that size forever. 9, you should know as well. The index of the last element in the array A is a.length minus 1. Yeah, true. Again, here's an array of length 3. Oops. So the length here is 3, but the last element is 2. And then the last one, an initializer list can only be used when an array is first declared. That's true. You can't make an array of a certain size and then make an initializer list later. So if you want to initialize an array, you have to do it right when you make it. Okay. If you got any questions on those, let me know, especially number 7. But again, I'll try to explain that better later. On to the next page. Okay. Try to do number 1 on your own. Which of the following are valid declarations? So look through these 7 different options and circle the ones you think are correct ways to make an array. Try that right now. All right, pause the video if you're not done. But if you are done, here's the answers. Okay, number 1, is that a valid way to make an array? No, what's missing? Right, there should be a bracket after this int here. How about number 2? Same thing, they're trying to do an initializer list, but they forgot the bracket to make it an array. Number 3, int bracket scores equals int 30. So it gives you the brackets, tells you the size, but what's missing? You just have the word new here. If you don't have an initializer list, that happens. And number 4, well, here it's doing the initializer list, it's got the bracket, but if you do an initializer list, you do not have the word new. Number 5, int bracket scores equals new int 30. Yup, that's the way to make an empty array. And number 6, chart bracket grades equals ABCDF. Yup, that's how you do an initializer list. If you want to initialize the array, that's your way to do it. And then number 7, char bracket grades equals new char. What's missing there? You need some size in here. Okay, so there's only 2 ways to correctly initialize an array, and it's 5 and 6. If you want to make an empty array, if you want to make an initialized array. All right, number 2, what is the problem with the following code? What changes would fix that problem? Okay, so we've got an initialized list of values. Int bracket numbers equals 3, 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 12, 32, 3, 12, 6. Then we got a for loop, and the for loop starts at 1, goes as long as we're less than or equal to numbers.length, count plus plus, and wants to know what's the following, or what's the problem with the code. Well, I guess we should say what it's supposed to do. What do you think it's supposed to do? It's supposed to be printing out all values in the array. Is it going to do that? first off, there's no problem with this list up here. The initializer list is initialized correctly. It's just like number 6 up here. But if I want to visit every spot, we've gone over this a few times, that 3 is at index what? 0. So count can't start at 1, it's got to start at 0. And then what's the other problem? Well, if you're going up to numbers.length, this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 numbers in it. So numbers.length is 11. But if count is equal to 11, this only goes from index 0 to 10. So it's going to go out of bounds. So this equals needs to go away. So count needs to start at 0, always less than length. Okay, number 3, you should be able to do this. Write an array declaration to represent the following statements. A is we want students' names for a class of 25 students. What type of an array would that be? Well, if it's names, it's got to be a string. So we'd say string, bracket, bracket names. And we're now initializing them, so we're just making them for 25. So equals new, this should all be on one line, int 25. All right, why don't you try B? Students' test grades for a class of 40 students. And assume that I don't like giving decimal or half points, so assume that all the test grades are going to be full points, so integers. Take 10 seconds and do B. Okay, here's what it should look like. It should be int bracket bracket something like grades or whatever you called it equals new int, and then inside the brackets 40 students, so size 40. It's a big class. Okay, questions with this page, please call me over. If not, here's the last page. Okay, so we got 2 methods to write on this last page. Number 4, write a method called SumArray that accepts an array of double values and returns the sum of the values stored in the array. So what type of method do you think it should be? Well, it's the sum of the values in a double array. It's returning a double, so you should have public double. What's the name of the method? It says SumArray. And what's the parameter? It accepts an array of doubles. So double bracket bracket, we'll just call it A. Okay, so we still need pre and post conditions. Here the precondition would be an array of doubles. And the post condition, what the method does and what it returns the sum of the values in the array. Okay, so we've done methods like this before. What do you think I need first? Well, if I'm going to be summing something up, we need an accumulator. It's got to be a double, since the values I'm going to be summing are all doubles. So let's call it double sum. We want it to start at 0. Hopefully now you're getting used to making a for loop to go through an array. So we have for int I equals 0. I is less than a.length. We just talked about this. We want to start at 0, go strictly less than the length with no double parentheses. I plus plus. And this was also one of the multiple choice questions. If I want to add the sum of the actual value, what needs to go inside here? Should have sum plus equals what? Right, a bracket I. Just getting the actual value. And then at the end, we're going to return the sum. Pretty straightforward, I hope. Nothing too crazy there. And then last one, number 5. Write a method called switch them that accepts 2 integer arrays as parameters and switches the contents in the arrays. Okay, so what type of method do you think this should be? This is a little tricky. It's switching the values in the array. This gets back to that true false number 7 that I said I'd mention. When an array is passed as parameters and changed inside the method, we're going to be changing the arrays because we're switching them. The changes will be gone when the method returns. That was false. The changes will be there when the method returns. So if I switch values inside this method, I don't need to return the arrays to have the values saved. So if I'm not returning the arrays, that makes this a public void. And I've mentioned before that a lot of array methods are public voids because of that. So I'm going to call it public void switch them, because that's what it told me to call it. And it said it accepts 2 integers arrays. So I need int bracket bracket A and int bracket bracket B. And notice they added a precondition for you. Both arrays are the same size. If they weren't the same size, we'd obviously have a problem. So if I'm going to switch the 2 arrays, they need to be the same size. So make sure you make that part of your precondition. It's 2 int arrays of the same size. And the post condition is that the values in the arrays are switched. Okay. So whenever you're switching, this has come up a few times now, you need that temp variable. You got to save the first thing you're going to overwrite. So I'm going to make a temp to start out with. And initially, let's just make it A bracket 0. I'm going to save what's ever in the first array at spot 0. Okay, now we need to go through the array and switch every spot. So we need a for loop if we're going to do that. What's our for loop start at? 0. I is less than A.length or B.length. Doesn't matter, they're the same size. So I said A.length, but if you'd rather say B.length, it'll do the same thing. And every time we switch, we got to save the first value we're switching. So we're going to set temp equal to whatever's in A bracket I. Since A bracket I is saved, we can overwrite what's in A bracket I. Set A bracket I equal to B bracket I. And now B bracket I would be equal to what? We want what was in A bracket I originally, so that's been saved in temp. That's it. We have no return, and I've changed values inside the arrays that I've sent over, but I don't have to return them. They're changed forever. They're changed back in the driver. Wherever you call A and B again, they'll be changed. Okay? That's the end of that. So we are done with array packet number 2. The next video will take you through our next program they're going to be working on, which is called histogram. See you then.